The damage is irreparable. Those were the words my mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch, used as he slid my termination letter across the polished mahogany table. Falsifying a document of this magnitude is the cardinal sin of our profession. Your name, I'm afraid, is now poison. In that sterile, silent room, under the gaze of men I'd respected my entire life, my world didn't just crumble, it was vaporized. They didn't just fire me. They branded me a heretic, a forger. Erasing a decade of devotion in a single, cold-blooded sentence. And right there, in that moment of absolute demolition, I learned the most brutal lesson of my life. A reputation is just a story someone else tells about you, and they can set that story on fire whenever they damn well please. The sting of that betrayal was a physical thing, a shard of ice in my chest. I walked away from the National Archives, my past a smoking crater behind me. I had to go somewhere. Anywhere. So I went home, seeking refuge, expecting some sliver of comfort. Instead, I got an interrogation. When I told my father I was going to take what little savings I had and start a small workshop, focusing on the restoration of modern calligraphy, he actually laughed. "Calligraphy?" he scoffed, the sound like grinding stone. "You've just been professionally executed for forgery, and your grand plan is to what? Fix fancy handwriting for rich old ladies? You're an embarrassment. Liam, you had a real career, and you threw it away for a child's hobby." My mother just stood there, her silence a ringing indictment. That was the real departure. Not from the archives, but from the family that saw my devastation as just another failure. Fueled by their scorn and Finch's treachery, I became a man possessed. I rented a cramped, dusty room above a print shop and poured every ounce of myself into my work. The world of elite archivists had cast me out, so I dove into the world they mocked. Calligraphy restoration wasn't just about ink and parchment. It was an intimate science of pressure, pigment, and decay. While my former colleagues worked with national treasures, I worked on forgotten letters, discarded diaries, and water-damaged poetry. I spent endless nights hunched over a light table, my eyes burning, my hands stained with a dozen shades of iron gall ink. Learning the forgotten languages of the pen, it was a solitary, obsessive pursuit. I wasn't just restoring documents. I was trying to restore myself, one delicate, mere invisible stroke at a time. The struggle was immense. Money was tight, and the whispers of my disgrace followed me. But I kept going, driven by a rage that had cooled into a diamond-hard resolve. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely of places, a moldy box of 18th century shipping manifests I'd bought for a pittance. The work was tedious, a job no one else would touch, but as I carefully stabilized the brittle pages, I noticed something, an anomaly. A specific chemical signature in the ink, a faint watermark on the paper. It was identical to the one on the historical land grant I was accused of forging. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was impossible. This box of manifests was verifiably authentic, its provenance impeccable. For 6 months, I slept in my workshop, living on coffee and adrenaline. I cross-referenced, analyzed, and pieced together a puzzle that had been buried for 200 years. The truth, when it finally emerged, was staggering. The land grant wasn't a forgery. It was real. Dr. Finch, my revered mentor, had discovered the same evidence years ago, but realized that acknowledging the document's authenticity would invalidate decades of the archives. Own published research and force a politically explosive land reclamation case. So he buried it. When I, his protege, started asking questions that led too close to that same truth, he didn't hesitate. He chose the institution's reputation over mine. He fed me to the wolves to protect a comfortable lie. I didn't go to an academic board. I went to the world. I wrote a detailed, explosive exposé, complete with high-resolution imaging and an irrefutable chemical analysis of the inks, and published it online. It went viral. The story of the disgraced archivist vindicated by the trivial art of calligraphy restoration was irresistible. The heritage preservation community was set ablaze. My small workshop was suddenly the epicenter of a revolution. The very techniques I'd perfected on forgotten letters were now being sought by the world's top museums. My fall from grace had, against all odds, become my ascension. I was invited to be the keynote speaker at the annual Heritage Preservation Symposium. The host institution, the National Archives. As I stood backstage, I could feel the poetic justice of it all, thick and sweet in the air. Then, the conference organizer approached me. "Dr. Alistair Finch will be introducing you," he said, oblivious. Of course he was. The final act. I walked onto the stage to a storm of applause. The auditorium was packed, and there, in the third row, I saw my parents, their faces pale and taut. In the center of the stage, looking a decade older, was Finch. He read my introduction from a card, his voice hollow, his praise tasting like ash. He called my work groundbreaking and my journey remarkable, never once meeting my eye. When he finished, I walked to the podium, the applause thundering in my ears. The room fell silent. I looked out at the sea of faces, at my parents, and then I let my gaze settle on Alistair Finch, who stood frozen by the side of the stage. "Thank you, Dr. Finch," I began, my voice amplified, clear and I learned more from you than any other person in my career. You taught me that history isn't just what's written on the page. It's also about what's hidden, what's buried, and the price of the lies we tell to protect ourselves. A collective intake of breath swept through the hall. "You tried to turn my name to poison," I continued, my voice unwavering. "But in doing so, you handed me the antidote. You taught me that true preservation isn't about protecting old narratives. It's about having the courage to restore the truth, no matter the cost." I saw it then, the complete and total collapse of his composure. The mask of the respected academic shattered, leaving only a defeated old man, exposed and utterly ruined in front of the entire world he had built. He didn't walk off the stage. He fled. I never saw my parents after the speech. They slipped out, but I knew, in that moment, their derision had been replaced by a terrible, searing understanding of what they had done. Their silence, this time, was an admission. This time I knew. Today I stand in my own institute, a place built not on dusty traditions, but on an unshakable commitment to the truth. I learned that sometimes your life has to be torn down to the studs. Sometimes the people you trust most will be the ones to light the match. But your true worth isn't in the reputation they give you. It's in what you build from the ashes. They can burn your story, but they can't touch your truth. And in the end, that is the only thing that can truly set you free.